Every fighting game ever, and yes, I mean every single one, can trace its roots and origins back to one singular point in video game history: the release of Street Fighter 2. Sure, there were technically fighting games before Street Fighter 2. Heck, Street Fighter 1 came out before this game, and it was technically a fighting game, and it most certainly laid the groundwork. However, everything we've come to know fighting games for today came from this game right here, Street Fighter 2. Everything from 2D classics like Mortal Kombat to 3D juggernauts like Tekken owe something to this game right here. And it's many, many, many different revisions, ports, and remakes. So how does the original Street Fighter 2 hold up? And is it still worth playing in 2025? Come with me, and we'll find out together! Now, before we get super deep into my analysis, I want to clarify something. I'm using Super Street Fighter 2, the new challengers, as the baseline for my review, as I personally believe this is the absolute best way to play Street Fighter 2. The other versions are okay, but this is the preferred way for me. So most of the footage you will be seeing are from this version, as well as some footage from Champion Edition. With that out of the way, let's go into the history of Street Fighter 2. The game released in 1991 in arcades, and was an absolute smash hit, making an estimate of $10 billion, making it one of the highest grossing arcade games of all time. It probably doesn't hurt that in arcades alone, this game was remade into oblivion, but hey, $10 billion is $10 billion! The game also had a ton of home console versions, as well as some handheld ports, though I will be focusing on the arcade versions in this video. Alright, with all that out of the way, let's talk about the most important thing when it comes to fighting games: the gameplay. So, Street Fighter 2 uses a 6-button layout, like the good version of Street Fighter 1. You've got 3 punch buttons and 3 kick buttons, all for light, medium, and heavy variations. Light attacks are fast, but they don't do a lot of damage, and strong attacks are slower, but do a ton of damage. Got it? Good. And the goal of the game is simple. You're dropped into an arena, and you're supposed to beat the ever-loving crap out of the other guy. In the original Street Fighter 2, there were 8 playable characters. Champion Edition added 4 more, and then new challengers added another 4 on top of that, rounding things out to about 16 fighters in total. Each character has their own fighting style, unique abilities, and special moves, making them all stand out. And special moves are the lifeblood of this game. By making motions or inputs with the D-pad or analog stick combined with an attack button, you can pull off special moves. Everything from projectiles to anti-air attacks, spinning kicks, you name it. Mastering these things is essential. If you don't know your character's special moves, well, you're screwed. Plain and simple. Personally, I'm a Ryu guy. He's an all-rounder, and he's got everything I need. Anti-air, a solid kick move, and Hadokens. What more could you want out of your main fighter? There are also throws in this game, which you perform by walking up to your opponent and pressing the strong punch button while holding the direction buttons forwards or backwards. These moves are good for getting past an opponent's block. What is a block? Glad you asked. Blocking is how you guard yourself against attacks. You simply hold back and you'll block any incoming attacks. And the last thing I probably need to mention is the combos. Combos are when you string together attacks before your opponent can recover. They're fundamental to all fighting games. And here's the funny part. Combos are actually a glitch. Yup, the developers didn't plan for them whatsoever, and weren't even sure if they should keep them. But they did end up leaving them in at the end because they didn't think anyone would actually figure them out, which is really funny looking back on it now, because like I said, because combos are now a staple of most fighting games. You know, this has to be the earliest example of it's not a bug, it's a feature I can find. Another really cool thing Street Fighter 2 brings back from the first game are the Between Fights minigames. After every couple of matches, you'll get to play a minigame, and all of them are actually pretty fun. The first one has you smashing a car, and this minigame actually comes from Final Fight, which is really cool. The next one has you smash wine barrels as they fall off a rack, and the last one has you destroy a stack of burning oil barrels. All three of these minigames are a ton of fun and a great break from all the fighting. Though I personally enjoy the car destroying one best. And I really hope whoever owns that car has really, really good insurance. Because this thing is fucking totaled. And now we get to talk about what's probably my favorite thing about most fighting games. The story. They're always crazy. Most of the time they're cool. And the characters in them, 9 times out of 10, are amazing. Now, Street Fighter 2, I will say this much, is definitely not my favorite fighting game story, but it's still pretty cool, especially the characters themselves. We will start with the overarching plot, then we'll talk about each individual character's motivations and storylines. Get it? Got it? Good. The main overarching plot of Street Fighter 2 centers on the evil dictator M. Bison and his criminal organization Shadow Lu. They sponsor a World Warriors tournament to lure in the strongest fighters in the world, with the ultimate goal of brainwashing them into serving in Shadow Lu's ranks. All the characters enter into this tournament with various goals and motivations. As to my knowledge, most of them have no idea what M. Bison's plans are, and sort of just show up to achieve their own objectives. Now, that's the overarching storyline. However, in most fighting games, the main bulk of the story is told through the individual characters and their plot lines. So, that's what we'll go over next, starting with Ryu, who is my main Street Fighter character. Basically, he's a wandering hippie who wants to fight everybody and walk the path of a true warrior. That's the best way I can sum up his story in this game. He enters the second World Warriors tournament simply to get stronger, and that's it. Yeah, he's literally just here to fight people. Ryu does get more complex storylines in later games. However, here, he's just here to throw punches and Hadoukens. Ryu's fighting style is the Hazoken. Okay, I can't pronounce that, so I'm just going to put it here on screen. It's this fighting style, and it translates to Assassin's Fist in English. Though Ryu's master, Goken, taught him a non-lethal version of it. Also gonna clear this up because most people are confused by this, but Ryu's win quote, "You must beat Shin Long to stand a chance against me," is actually a mistranslation. There is no character called Shin Long. You see, what happened was, the text was originally made in Japanese, then it was translated over to Chinese, and then it was translated over to English, meaning it quite literally got lost in translation. What the win quote is supposed to say in a direct translation from Japanese is, "You must beat my dragon punch to stand a chance." Believe me, this isn't gonna be the last time mistranslation causes some really goofy stuff to happen. That's for sure. So, how does Ryu play in-game? Well, pretty good actually. He's a really good beginner character, and my personal favorite to use because of how adaptable and versatile he is. He has an anti-air move called the Shinryuken, a hurricane kick, and, of course, the iconic... If you're just starting Street Fighter 2, I would recommend going with Ryu to get the basics down, because he is absolutely perfect for beginners. Oh, and another funny thing about Ryu is when he wins the tournament, he just bails. Yeah, he doesn't stick around at all for the trophies or the award ceremonies. He just runs off to find someone else to fight, to walk the path of the true warrior. And next up, we have Ken Masters, Ryu's lifelong rival, best friend, and basically his brother in arms. Both were trained under the same master, Goken, which is why they share the same fighting style. But while Ryu is calm and disciplined, Ken is fiery and competitive, and he absolutely loves to show off. Ken's parents actually sent him to Goken's dojo to learn discipline. That's where he met Ryu. The two grew up together, pushing each other to improve, and their friendly rivalry is one of the defining relationships in the Street Fighter series. However, by the time Street Fighter 2 takes place, Ken has been living it up with his girlfriend, Eliza. In fact, this guy is getting so much pussy that his fighting skills are actually starting to decay, because he hasn't been training nearly as much as he should be. The only thing that reignites his fighting spirit is an invitation from Ryu to join the World Warriors Tournament. And fun fact here, Ken was given the surname Masters to avoid a trademark conflict with Mattel, who was wanting to make Street Fighter 2 action figures at the time. However, there was also a Barbie doll called Ken, who also happened to be made by Mattel. So to avoid confusion, they just gave Ken the last name Masters and called it a day. Oh, and in Ken's ending, he actually marries Eliza, which is a pretty cool touch. Though definitely not as cool as Ryu just saying F you to the award ceremony. Oh, and since Ken has all the same moves and abilities as Ryu, if you're a beginner, you can also safely go with Ken if Ryu isn't quite your style. Next up, we have Chun-Li. She's a martial artist and an Interpol officer who enters the tournament to seek revenge against M. Bison for the death of her father. And yeah, she's an absolute badass. Chun-Li also holds a special place in video game history as the first female fighting game character. Speaking of which, there is a very funny behind-the-scenes story about her creation. You see, Capcom's producer, Yuji Akamoto, I think I'm saying his name right, suggested making her life bar shorter than the other characters because, quote, women are not as strong as men. But designer Akira Natsunani pushed back and they agreed not to do it. Honestly, thank God, because that would have made this game incredibly sexist and it would not have aged nearly as well had they gone through with that. Gameplay-wise, Chun-Li can be very tricky to learn. In the earliest versions of Street Fighter 2, she only had 2 special moves, But in later updates and revisions, she would gain more special moves, even though the core design of her character and character archetype would remain the same. Now, one of her moves, the spinning bird kick, basically defies gravity. Like, I don't see how this move is physically possible. But here's a question I have about it. You see, to pull it off, you have to hold down to charge it for a few seconds, and then press up and kick at the same time. But there's an in-air version, and I have no idea how you're supposed to pull it off. Because you can't hold down long enough while you're in the air in order to pull this move off. If any of you have any idea how this move works, let me know in the comments section down below. Anyway, Chun-Li is mostly a rushdown and footsie character. She's one of the fastest characters in the game with excellent mid-range attacks. In hyper fighting, she even gets a projectile, though it's nowhere near as strong as Ryu's Hadouken. Still, it adds variety. Another thing that changes between versions of this game is Chun-Li's ending. You see, in the original Street Fighter II, she will always go back to being a young single girl after she defeats Bison. However, in the new Challengers update, you actually get the option at the end of the game to have Chun-Li either A, go back to being a young single girl, or option B, becoming a detective for Interpol, which I find to be a really neat touch. So, Chun-Li overall is a powerful fighter with a pretty neat story. However, I would not recommend her for beginners. Her command inputs can be pretty tricky to pull off, as well as the fact that to fully utilize her, you're gonna need a pretty decent understanding of Street Fighter II's mechanics and gameplay. So I would not recommend her for beginners whatsoever. Next up is E Honda. He's a sumo wrestler who became upset that the rest of the world didn't view sumo wrestling with the same reverence as the Japanese. So he entered the second World Warrior Tournament with one goal in mind: to prove that sumo wrestlers rank among the greatest fighters in the world. Gameplay-wise, E Honda's toolkit is pretty straightforward. He's got his iconic headbutt, a butt stomp, and of course, his 100 hand slap. And let me tell you, that move is busted as hell. It has to be one of the most overpowered moves in the game. Don't believe me? Well, watch this, buckaroo!
One, fight! You beat perfect.
What's wild is that it's this overpowered across all versions of Street Fighter II that I know of. You would think at some point Capcom would have been like, hey, we really should rebalance this move. But no, it's stayed broken for the past 20 years. Oh, and E Honda's ending, by the way, is basically him being like, yeah, I won. So let me go home to Japan and eat and hang out with my buddies. Oh, and train hard as well. And yeah, that's all I have to say about E Honda. Next up is Blanka. His backstory is that he was once a human, but after a plane crash and some interactions with some electric eels, he mutated. And that's how he ended up with his green skin and his ability to generate electricity. He's one of the strangest fighters in the game, but that's what makes him stand out so much. Blanka's fighting style is animalistic and unpredictable. That's the one thing I can say about Blanka players. They're unpredictable. He can zip across the screen with his rolling ball attack, or just turn into a living electrical circuit and fry you if you touch him. He doesn't have a ton of special moves, but the ones he does have are easy to pull off and are very effective. He's not a very hard character to learn, and while he's definitely not my personal favorite fighter, he's a great character for beginners to pick up and have fun with. And his unpredictability make him dangerous, even if you're just starting out with him. And his ending is, well, a little strange. After the tournament, Blanka reunites with his mother. The way she recognizes him is an ankle bracelet he apparently worn ever since he was a child. So despite years of living in the jungle, he never took off the bracelet. And also, the woman who happened to be his mother and would remember this exact bracelet happened to be at the finale of the World Warriors tournament. Yeah, it's pretty contrived, but the ending's very heartwarming, with the mother and son being reunited. Next up, we have the patriotic Russian wrestler Zangief, who, by the way, wrestles bears. His sole purpose in entering the World Warrior Tournament is to show off Russia's strength to the rest of the world. Now, Zangief is a big grappler character, and let me just say it, if you're new to the game, don't pick Zangief. I have played this game for a long time now, and I still can't figure out how to consistently pull off any of his special moves. His inputs are notoriously difficult, and unless you've absolutely mastered them, you're gonna struggle with him. Big time. But if you do figure him out, he's an absolute powerhouse who can deal massive damage with his grapples. But there's one big problem. He has no ranged attacks, and he's very slow. Meaning the best way for your opponent to beat you is simply to pick a character with a projectile and then proceed to spam it. Seriously, he has no reliable way to deal with ranged attacks. And then there's his ending, which is honestly just bizarre. He ends up dancing with the Russian president. I am not kidding. See for yourself. Seriously, what the hell, Capcom? What were you thinking? Next up is everyone's favorite charge character, Guile. He's a United States Air Force pilot who enters the World Warrior Tournament to seek revenge against M. Bison for the death of his friend and fellow airman, Charlie Nash. His mission is clear: confront Bison and make him pay. Now, Guile is what's called a charge character. Other fighters in this game do have charge inputs, but Guile is the only 100% true charge character in the original Street Fighter 2. Every one of his special moves requires charging. Basically, how it works is you hold a directional input for a few seconds, and then press another button with another directional input in order to perform a special move. In other words, charge characters are very technical and require a bit of strategy to use effectively. Guile's Sonic Boom is the perfect example of this. It takes time to charge, but holding back, which is how you charge the attack by the way, is also how you block. That means you can technically charge up the attack while you're defending yourself, which adds a layer of strategy to this playstyle. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of charge characters, but I do understand the appeal. If you use charge characters in fighting games, please let me know in the comments down below why. I'm very curious to hear your reasons and opinions. Anyway, Guile's ending has him finally confronting Bison. He defeats him, but he doesn't kill him, because his family shows up and convinces him not to. They remind him that killing Bison would make him no better than the dictator himself. So, Guile goes home to his family, choosing peace over vengeance. And speaking of family, Guile has one of the funniest mistranslations in the entire game. Sometimes when he wins, he tells his opponents to go home and be a family man. Now, for most of the roster, that's okay. But when he says it to Chun-Li, yeah, he straight up misgenders her. The original Japanese version was closer to go home and be with your family, which makes way more sense. Still, it's one of the funniest things to happen in the game when you beat Chun-Li as Guile and he goes, go home and be a family man. It's like, did you not see the massive pair of mommy milkers she was jiggling around during the fight? Seriously, a guy would have to drink a lot of soy milk in order to get man boobs that size. Next up is the zoner Dalsim. He enters the second World Warrior Tournament to raise money for his impoverished village, which was devastated by Shadowloo. Dalsim is the very definition of a zoner. His goal is to keep opponents far away from him, and he does this by stretching his limbs across the screen to control the mid-range battlefield. He can even breathe fire, which adds another layer to his keep away strategy. But there's a catch. Those stretchy limbs of his, while powerful, are also vulnerable to attacks if you mistime them. So you have to be careful. Overall, Dalsim can be very tricky to use, but in the hands of a skilled player, he's incredibly strong. His unique toolkit makes him one of the most distinctive fighters in Street Fighter II. Dalsim's ending is nothing too special. He takes the prize money home, and 3 years later, his kid asks him about the picture on the wall. That picture, by the way, being of him winning the tournament, and Dalsim basically says, well, that was my past life. I'm pretty sure that's Dalsim's way of saying, yeah, I'm not a Street Fighter anymore. So, that was the original 8 fighters, but when Champion Edition came out, it let you play as the 4 boss characters. The first one we will talk about is Sagat, the Emperor of Mutai. He was actually the final boss in the original Street Fighter, and that big scar on his chest, yeah, Ryu gave him that scar during their battle, and now Sagat wants revenge. I don't really know exactly how to describe Sagat's playstyle, but he has a lot of projectiles and anti-air moves, and his special move inputs aren't that hard to pull off. And his endings are nothing too special. In Street Fighter II Champion Edition and in Street Fighter II Turbo, all the bosses have the same ending screen, just with a different guy on top and slightly different text. However, in Street Fighter II, the new challengers, all the bosses get unique ending art. But Sagat's ending, regardless what version you play, basically boils down to, I am now the greatest fighter in the world, but I still want to take down Ryu as revenge for him defeating me and giving me this big-ass scar on my chest. Next, we'll talk about my favorite Shadowloo boss, Vega. He comes from a wealthy noble family in Spain, but after his mother lost her fortune, she remarried for financial security. Tragically, her new husband killed her. This traumatized Vega, and in a fit of rage, he killed his stepfather. Vega wears a mask and wields a claw. The mask isn't for intimidation though. It's to keep blood from staining his perfect face. Because if there's one thing you need to know about Vega, it's that he's the biggest narcissist in Street Fighter history. He constantly brags about how beautiful he is, and he genuinely believes that pretty fighters never lose. He's also a Spanish bullfighter and a ninjutsu master, which is reflected in his gameplay style. Vega is fast, agile, and flashy. But here's my one complaint about him. His inputs. They're weird, and they're hard to pull off. He's probably the hardest character in Street Fighter 2 to use effectively. Honestly, that's the only thing that keeps me from using him as my main, is the fact that, well, just look at these input commands. Look at them. What is any of this stuff? Also, his ending is absolutely hilarious. He basically goes back to Spain and spends his time praising himself, calling himself the strongest fighter in the world, and the most beautiful man alive. He's a narcissist through and through, but that's part of his charm. Next up, we have Balrog. He's a mix between a charge character and a rushdown character, and one cool thing about him is he's a professional boxer. That means he has no kick moves. Every single attack he throws is a punch. Also, he is the easiest boss in the entire game because to beat him, all you have to do is spam Hadokens, because he does not have any projectile attacks. Balrog's backstory is wild. He was a former heavyweight boxing champion who got banned for using illegal tactics and for permanently injuring and killing one of his opponents. After that, he joined up with Shadow Lu and worked his way up to becoming one of M. Bison's top enforcers. He's greedy, short-tempered, and driven by a thirst for money and power. His ending always makes me laugh, though. He wins the tournament and celebrates being the best fighter in the world by surrounding himself with gold and women. Yeah, he's a greedy bastard, and he doesn't hide it at all. Now let's talk about the naming situation with the bosses, because this is one of the most infamous localization swaps in fighting game history. You see, Balrog wasn't originally called Balrog. He was based on the American boxer Mike Tyson, so in Japan, his name was actually M. Bison. But Capcom realized that might cause legal trouble, so they shuffled the names around for the international release. Here's a chart showing off all the names. Yeah, not entirely sure why Vega had to have his name swapped around as well. But, I think it suits him. Oh, and funny story, because of the naming mismatch with the international release, at tournaments, Balrog is called the Boxer, Vega, Claw, and M. Bison is called the Dictator. So yeah, now if you watch a tournament and hear the names Dictator, Claw, or Boxer, you now know who they're talking about. You're welcome. Speaking of the Dictator, now let's talk about the big bad of Street Fighter 2, M. Bison. Not much is known about his backstory, other than the fact that he's the leader of the criminal organization Shadow Lu, and the mastermind behind the entire World Warrior Tournament. He also wields a mysterious energy called Psycho Power. It fuels all of his attacks, and let me tell you, this character is busted. M. Bison is easily the most overpowered character in the entire game. Between his Psycho Crusher, his weird head stomp, and his insane damage output, fighting him is a nightmare. Sure, it makes sense. He is the final boss, after all. But if you're up against him in versus mode, good luck, you're probably gonna lose. Also, his ending is just great. If you beat the game as M. Bison, he straight up takes over the world. And the game even throws in a line that says, will anyone ever defeat this scumbag? It's just so 90s, and it's great. Alright, that's the original 8 fighters and the 4 bosses. We're done. We can move on to something else now, is what I would say, but on September 10th, 1993, Capcom released Super Street Fighter II, The New Challengers. This was the 4th major update to the game, and honestly, it's my preferred way to play this game. It added 4 brand new fighters. So let's start with the first, Fei Long. Fei Long is a youthful and talented martial artist from Hong Kong. He began training in Kung Fu at age 6, eventually developing his own style, and even fought on the streets to sharpen his skills. He entered the tournament to test himself against real fighters and to honor the fighting spirit. Now, I've heard some sources say he's a movie star, but his ending actually has him turning down the chance to become one. But other sources suggest he already is. Later games in the series might clarify this, but as of now, I have no idea of his status. But if any of you guys know about whether or not Fei Long is a movie star or not, please leave it in the comments below, because this is honestly confusing, and there's a lot of conflicting sources on this. Gameplay-wise, Fei Long has a cool little punch combo that can be strung together, plus an anti-air fire kick. He's actually pretty fun to play as, but he's not my main. I don't really use him that much, and honestly, I find him kinda boring as a character, but I will point one thing out about him, is the fact that he's actually based off Bruce Lee, which is just something I thought I would throw out there, because I thought it was kinda cool. Next up is DJ. And funny story, in the original concept for Super Street Fighter II, The New Challengers, 2 of the new fighters were going to be brothers, who shared the same body design, but with different heads. But Capcom designer James Gogard thought it would be redundant since the game already had mirrored characters, those being Ryu and Ken. So instead, one of those brothers evolved into Fei Long, and the other one was replaced entirely by DJ. DJ is a Jamaican kickboxer and musician. His backstory is simple. He enters the tournament to find new sounds and inspiration for his music. He's upbeat, energetic, and always smiling. Heck, he has such an upbeat personality, he's become a fan favorite because of it. But for me personally, I don't hate him at all. He's just not a character I really connect to that much. Spoiler alert, there's only one of the new challengers I actually like. The other 3, I'm just kinda neutral on. I don't hate them, but I don't love them. One good thing I can say about DJ is his ending. It's another one of those endings that's just absolutely hilarious. After defeating Bison, DJ finally discovers his new sound, and immediately starts rapping about how he beat Bison. No joke, his new song is literally about his victory over M. Bison. It's goofy, it's funny, and I personally think it fits his character pretty well. Gameplay-wise, he's okay. His special moves aren't anything groundbreaking to me, and honestly, I don't have anything more to say about this guy, unfortunately. So let's move on. And next up, we have T-Hawk. He's a grappler, and I'll be honest, I have no idea how to pull off any of his moves. Seriously, I've tried, and I just can't figure them out. Also, the reason T-Hawk entered the second World Warrior Tournament is because Shadowloo stole his people, the Thunderfoot tribe's land, and now he wants it back, by any means necessary. I say it that way because his ending straight up implies that he kills Bison. He straight up tells Bison in his ending he knows exactly how to deal with trash like you. And then the screen goes to black, and it's heavily suggested, at least from what I can tell, that he finishes the job. Holy crap, T-Hawk, you are a certified badass. Gameplay-wise, T-Hawk is a grappler, through and through. High damage, big throws, but very hard to use effectively. Unless you're really good at the game, I wouldn't recommend playing as him. He's powerful, but his inputs are very tough to master and pull off. And now we get to my favorite of the new challengers, Cammy. She was found outside of a British military installation with no memory of who she was. From there, she was taken in by the British Special Forces, and for some reason, she received training from them, which is kind of odd when you think about it. Like, you just found this person laying outside of your military base, and now you're gonna train them with your special forces? Whatever. This is the same game that has a yoga man who can teleport. And eventually, she entered the Second World Warrior Tournament after feeling a strange connection to M. Bison. At the end of her story, she does confront Bison, who claims the two of them were lovers. Yeah, I'm not kidding. Thankfully, later games retcon this out, because as we'll see in later games, Bison is kind of a creep. But for now, that's the Street Fighter 2 version of her story. We'll save all the stuff about the dolls and such for a later video. Gameplay-wise, Cammy is a rushdown character who primarily uses her legs. Her spiral arrow and cannon spike make her fast and aggressive. While some of her moves can be a tad bit tricky to pull off, I would say she's easily the most beginner-friendly of the new challengers, and she's a ton of fun to play as. And now, let's talk about her costume. Whoever designed this thing clearly wasn't thinking about practicality in combat. And here's the funny part. While most fighting games at the time emphasized female characters' boobs, Cammy's design emphasizes her butt. I'm not kidding. Apparently, the designers of this game thought, screw the cleavage, we need to make a character that shows off her ass. And let me say, as a human gamer male, I can most certainly appreciate this decision. Heck, her ass is so badass that when her classic costume was released in Street Fighter 6, it actually caused a controversy. No, I am not kidding. This actually happened. And with that, we've talked about all 16 characters. Oh boy. Yeah, it's a pretty full roster once you get to Super Street Fighter 2, the new challengers. Now, let's get into why I think this version is the best version of the game. There were 5 versions of Street Fighter 2 released in the arcades. There is the original version, which only had 8 fighters, and unless you just want to see what the original Street Fighter 2 looked like, don't play this one. Then there was Champion Edition, which added the bosses. Then there was Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting, which made the game much faster. Many people prefer this version, but it's just way too fast for me, and I really don't like it that much. Then there's my preferred way to play the game, Street Fighter 2, the new challengers, which added 4 more characters. Then lastly, there was Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. A lot of people say this is the best competitive version of Street Fighter 2. And honestly, they're probably right. It's the most refined of all the versions, and it introduced super combos. But here's the catch. The American arcade release has a bug which locks the difficulty to the highest setting. And to this day, even when Capcom re-releases the arcade version, like in the Street Fighter 30th Anniversary Collection, the bug is still there, and you can't change the difficulty. Meaning, unless you're a top-tier pro player, This version will absolutely kick your ass. Oh, and did I also mention that they took out the mini games in this version? Yeah, in this version, there's no mini games, which makes no sense. Why would you remove them? They were cool and I loved them. Really, the only good thing I can say about this version of Street Fighter 2 is this was the very first appearance of Akuma as a secret character. And yeah, that's all the good things I have to say about it. So yeah, if you want to have the best Street Fighter 2 experience that you can, take my advice and go with new challengers. And the next thing I want to talk about is this game's music, because it's amazing. Sure, some tracks are kind of forgettable, like Blanca's theme or Sagat's, but then you got others that are absolute god tier. My personal favorites are Kin's theme, because it sounds so badass and hype. Guile's theme, which sounds very heroic, and of course, Cammy's theme, which feels a little more mysterious, and honestly, Cammy's theme feels like it was made for her stage and not for the character itself. Speaking of stages, let's talk about them, because they're all amazing. Cammy's stage is my personal favorite because it takes place in an ancient castle ruin, and it's hands down my favorite. Everyone who watches this channel consistently should know that I love ancient ruins, and this place is no exception to that rule. Kin's stage is also fantastic. The original version was fine, but new challengers gave it an upgrade, and yeah, it looks pretty great now. And even though the music's not the best, Blanca's stage, visually, is also pretty good. And then of course, Fei Long's. Who can forget this place? I mean, look at it. It takes place on a movie set, I believe. I'm not entirely sure, but it doesn't matter what it is, because it looks visually striking. So, yeah, that's pretty much everything I have to say about Street Fighter 2. It's absolutely a game you should play if you have even the slightest interest in fighting games. The best way to play it nowadays is with the Street Fighter 30th Anniversary Collection, and I recommend playing Super Street Fighter 2, the new challengers, for the best experience. Now, the Anniversary Collection does have online play, but for Street Fighter 2, it only has it for the Hyper Fighting and Super Turbo versions. Even though I'm not the biggest fan of those versions, I'm always up for an online match. In fact, I set up a whole section of my studio's Discord, the Dragon's Den, specifically for finding matches in fighting games. Links to my studio's Discord will be in the description if you want to join up. Also, if you want to support the channel, like and subscribe, of course, but also, you can buy my studio's game, Nova Rebellion, on Steam or itch.io right now. It's a game where you play as rock and roll space outlaws. Need I say any more? Links to that will also be in the description. So yeah, at the end of the day, Street Fighter 2 may not be my personal favorite fighting game, but I absolutely respect the impact it had on the industry. It's far from a bad game, and is actually a rock-solid fighting game, and is really good. And it also laid the groundwork for everything that would come after. Anyway, that's all for today. This is Troy Schultz, the Anti-Gamer Slayer, signing off!